What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Gooner channel, a channel 100% dedicated to the Arsenal, who, as we all know, are by far the greatest team the world has ever seen. Dust has settled on the Chelsea match, had lots of time to reflect on it. There are lots of talking points from that match. But as we head into the game against Sevilla tomorrow, there's one that I think is really important to discuss, and that is David Raya. Now, watching the game, very much like watching the game against Manchester City, it felt an awful lot like David Raya was flapping. There were 3 occasions where he looked like he might concede a goal. And of course, there was that people who try and tell you that Modric was going for a shot there. Just clearly not true. I mean, if you watch his eyes as he plays the ball, he's very much looking for the run of Sterling. The ball does go in over Raya, and it's one of those that, you know, any keeper can have a nightmare like that. The ball just loops over him. It was a perfect accidental goal, but he certainly didn't look solid. And so going into the game tomorrow, is there a chance that Ramsdale might replace him? Because let's face it, after all, Ramsdale was dropped. He hadn't had a bad start to the season, and he was a really key part of last season's success. Felt harsh that he was dropped, but I want to kind of look at this, having taken a deep breath and looked back on the Chelsea game. In reflection, he conceded 2 goals. One, the penalty, which, let's face it, Ramsdale is a delightful human being, and I'm really glad he's an Arsenal player, but he hasn't got a great record of saving penalties either. The second goal, as I've already said, was a fluky cross that went in over him, and it probably shouldn't have done, and I think we can all agree on that. But the other mistakes he made didn't lead to goals. We've all known that Raya was brought in to replace Ramsdale, not necessarily for his shot stopping or his command of the area even, but really because of his distribution. So what I want to do is I want to take a look at the comparative statistics from the games they've both played. Raya's now played 5 games. Ramsdale's played 4 games. Raya's kept 3 clean sheets. Ramsdale's kept 1 clean sheet. In games so far, David Raya has conceded 0.8 goals per game against Ramsdale's 1 goal per game. And he's made 1.6 saves per game versus Ramsdale's 1.3. So it's very close, but Raya comes out ahead in all of those metrics. But David Raya was never brought in because he's a better shot stopper, or even because he claims balls from crosses better. He was really brought in to suit the style of play that Arteta wants, to build from the back, to almost act as a centre-back. And when you look at the 5 games he's played, he touches a ball on average 50.3 times. And when you compare that to Aaron Ramsdale's 30.4, you start to see that he's more involved in the game. In terms of his distribution, his passing, well, it's really accuracy of his long balls is so much better than Ramsdale. He completes 6.6 long passes per game, and when you compare that to 2.8 of Aaron Ramsdale, you start to see a difference. So whilst I accept that David Raya has flapped a little bit and hasn't always looked as solid, the statistics actually show that he does distribute the ball better. Now, not in every single game, and to go back to that Man City game, I personally really wanted to see him replaced with Ramsdale. That it didn't happen and that Ramsdale stayed on the bench surprised me. But in the end, he did keep a clean sheet in that game. I know Alvarez nearly scored but didn't. And after the game, Arteta was effusive in saying that Raya had just played exactly how he wanted him to. Now, in a game against Chelsea, there were, again, a couple of instances where he gave the ball away, but they didn't lead to goals. In fact, he was only beaten by a penalty, which I don't think Ramsdale's record from penalties suggests that he would have saved. And from that freaky cross-come shot, well, look, let's be honest, it was a cross. If you look at Modric's eyes as he's going for it, he's got his eyes straight on Sterling. He looks, he whips the ball. Raya is off his line a little bit more than he should be, and he's not as tall as Rambo. Perhaps Rambo would have saved that. It's all conjecture. But really, when it comes to it, there are other things going on here in this picture, because every time Raya does something crazy, we see a picture of Ramsdale on the bench. Ramsdale's dad's had to come out and defend him against Carragher. Who actually said, when Ramsdale was spotted on the bench clapping a Raya save, he said it's a bit like watching someone who doesn't win an Oscar pretending to be happy for the person who does. All of this spotlight, all of this debate probably didn't need to happen. But a lot of this is also because of sentimentality. A lot of us fans really love Rambo. We love what he brought to the team. We love his charisma, and he wears his heart on his sleeve. So I'm reminded a little bit of 1989 John Lukic. In between the sticks, and Arsenal win their first league in 18 years. It was a fantastic season, full of ups and downs, and a terrible, almost bottling right at the end that was salvaged by a quite unbelievable victory at Anfield. But when George Graham made the step of signing David Seaman in 1990 for, I think it was then a record, it was over £1 million for a goalkeeper, which I know sounds nothing now, but was a huge amount back then. I personally was affronted by it. I couldn't understand why you would want to replace John Lukic. He was one of our best players. He was title-winning goalkeeper. With the distance of time over 30 years since then, I don't think anyone thinks it was a bad decision to bring in David Seaman. Arguably, actually, I'll stick my neck out here. I think David Seaman is the best Arsenal keeper we've ever had. I know Lehmann is the invincible, but come on, David Seaman, great signing. And maybe that's what we're seeing with Raya. Maybe as fans, we just don't want to accept that Ramsdale's not quite as good. Maybe Ramsdale, will have to move because he really wants to be England's number one. I hope that it doesn't come to this. I hope that we do see competition. All this talk about, it's never worked with two first-class goalkeepers in the side. I don't know if that means it can't be possible. I don't know what Arteta's thinking about the game tomorrow. Part of me does think that Ramsdale deserves a chance, because if it wasn't for Ramsdale, we wouldn't be in the Champions League. And for him to have not played a game so far in the Champions League seems harsh. Perhaps this is how you do it. Perhaps you bring Ramsdale in. He has a great game, a bit like he did against Brentford, and maybe he starts to cement a place. But for that to happen, Ramsdale's definitely going to have to start playing a little bit more like Raya. He's going to have to be on the ball a little bit more, and his distribution is going to have to be better. And I'm not sure that I could expect that kind of improvement from him quickly. It might just be that we're all talking about Raya's mistakes, which mostly don't lead to goals, because of this speculation about the two goalkeepers. Absent that, would we really even be discussing Raya's inclusion? After all, he's played 5 league games and he's kept 3 clean sheets, and one of those against Manchester City. Tomorrow's going to be really instructive, because if Arteta drops Raya, it would almost be like acknowledging that Raya had a bad game. If he brings Ramsdale in and Ramsdale has a great game, what happens at the Sheffield United game? Now, frankly, I think I could play in between the sticks against Sheffield United and possibly keep a clean sheet. That might be one of the silliest things I've ever said, but you get my point. The big talking point for me tomorrow night is, does Ramsdale start ahead of Raya? Now, my honest expectation on this one is that Raya keeps his position. I think we're going to see Raya playing most of the big games from now to the end of the season. But in the FA Cup, in the League Cup, Ramsdale's going to get his chance. I do personally hope that Ramsdale comes in just for sentimental reasons, and that's not really good enough. Deep down, I think I'm actually quite glad that Mikel Arteta doesn't pick players based on the sentimentality. It might well be that Arteta has a decision to make between his heart, where he probably picks Ramsdale, and his head, where he probably picks Raya. And I'm guessing that, Arteta's going to use his head. I expect to see Raya in goal tomorrow, but I would not be sad to see Ramsdale, and I hope he keeps a clean sheet if he does come in, and I'd love to see competition for places all over the pitch. Anyway, that's been my thoughts on the situation in the goal. Ramsdale, Raya, I'm sure you have your opinion. I can't wait to hear it. Leave it in the comments below. And before I let you go, it is worth saying that I am 3 subscribers short of the first landmark for any YouTube channel, which is 500. So if you haven't yet, well, what a difference you could make to a fledgling channel. Click subscribe. Click like if you like the video. Tell your friends. Get everyone involved. Till I see you tomorrow. Be lucky. Lots of love.